Born in Puerto Rico and raised near Orlando, Pedro Espada grew up in a musical family. He learned the trumpet, drums, and bass before discovering a powerful voice that could rival any rock anthem. Yet, the man commanding the stage today didn't speak for the first 3 years of his life, and later had to rebuild everything after a personal collapse cost him his marriage and sense of identity. Through his reinventions, one thing never left him: music.
Music has been everything for me. Music is freedom, but music has definitely guided me through my entire life since I was a little kid. When I was growing up and, being bullied and everything, I would turn to music. I would just kind of dive into music and just kind of forget the world.
Pedro shares how music became his lifeline and how it helped him transform from a quiet computer engineer into a rock frontman who found his voice, his purpose, and a whole new life. On Reinvention at Any Age. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Reinvention at Any Age. I'm Amy Sweezy, and I am passionate about helping you navigate through your reinvention. My guest today is the embodiment of 80s rock and roll. He's got the hair, the looks, the stage presence, and a voice so powerful you'd swear you're listening to a legendary 80s hair band frontman himself. Born in Puerto Rico and raised near Orlando, Pedro Espada grew up in a musical family where he taught himself to play the drums and bass before discovering his true gift: a voice that delivers a range which often outshines the original anthems. But beneath the 80s rock exterior is a man who didn't even speak for the first 3 years of his life. And he had to rebuild his entire world after a personal collapse cost him his marriage and sense of self. He credits music as the force that rescued him, guiding his evolution from a quiet computer engineer into the frontman for Rocketfly and Journey tribute band Voyage. Please welcome Pedro Espada to the podcast. Pedro, hi. Thank you so
Hello.
much for being here.
Hi, Amy. How you doing?
I'm great. I think I've known you for about 15 years. I was trying
It's
to
a
do the
long
math.
time.
I remember I saw you perform with Rocketfly back in maybe
Mhm.
about 2010. And of course, as a child of the 80s and a lover of hairband music, I was hooked on my old high school tunes, became a fan, and never looked back. So I want to start at the beginning. Can you just tell us a little bit about your upbringing in Puerto Rico, your parents, your siblings, and of course, life as a toddler who didn't speak until the age of 3?
Yes. Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah, so I was born in Puerto Rico. My mom's a singer. My dad also sang, but he played the trumpet and he played a little bit of guitar. So I grew up in a family with, that played music. And we were always, listening to music in the background. And yeah, when I was a small child, my mom was worried about me because I wouldn't talk, I wouldn't speak, and so they took me to a specialist, and the doctor's like, "He's fine. He just doesn't have anything to say." so, so at that point, my mom took me to like a special school that kind of teaches kids a little bit differently,
Okay.
and that's how we discovered that music was my language, basically.
So you weren't playing an instrument at the age of 3. You
No,
just, instead of actually talking, you were singing words.
correct. Correct. I didn't want to talk, but I had no problem singing songs.
So do you think you were just shy? Like, looking back now, do you think you just didn't have the words to say like the doctor said?
I think so. I've always been a very introvert person. I'm living in my own little world, just fantasizing about things, that's just, I've always been like that. Even though when I became a teenager, I was also that way. I was very shy and I had a hard time just making friends because I was so shy, but I was also kind of happy in my own little world, just doing my own little things that I was doing. Um, but yeah, I just didn't like to talk.
And it didn't
You
seem
know?
like a problem as you're getting, to be middle school, teenager, you're super introverted, super shy. Does this become a problem at all?
Yeah, well, you know how kids are in school. I got picked on and all that just because I was different. I just mind my own business. I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I was happy that way. But to other kids, it's like it was this weirdo over here in the corner. So it was a problem for me. There's a lot of bullying and stuff like that, all the way till I got to high school. When actually middle school, I should say, that's when I started playing the trumpet because my dad played the trumpet. So we had a trumpet at home, so it made sense to kind of jump on that first.
And what was it that brought you from Puerto Rico to Florida?
My parents just decided they wanted to move. To be honest, I don't know. I'm glad they did, but um, yeah, we moved to Florida. I think I was 8 years old, and I had to learn the language, which is very difficult for me. Um, so back then they had the bilingual classes where they had like teachers that could speak Spanish and kind of teach you a little bit that way, but it was hard. It was like I really got picked on then.
Well, so did you
Some
only speak Spanish until you were 8 when you moved to Florida, and that's when you, at 8 years old, had to figure out how to speak
yeah,
English?
yeah, exactly. I mean, in Puerto Rico they taught English, but I was a very basic at that time. I only knew house and pig and very basic words. I couldn't communicate. During that time, I really got into music as far as like the trumpet and stuff like that. Um, and it wasn't until later that when I got into high school that I discovered rock and roll.
All right, so you discovered music. You're playing
Yeah,
the drums, you play the trumpet, you learned the bass. When you were young and you were going through all of this, did you believe that music would be your eventual career?
no way.
No?
Nope. I thought music was just like a hobby. I didn't even think of it that way, that you could actually make a living and actually do something big with it.
So at what point then did you realize that you could sing and not just play instruments?
Yeah, so my dad bought me a drum set just out of the blue, and he bought himself a bass guitar, and he bought my brother a keyboard, and that's how I just taught myself how to play drums. And this is before YouTube. Yeah, YouTube wasn't around back then, so I just kind of listened to the records and just kind of try to follow along, and and then I saw a video. I think it was Van Halen "Jump." That was like the first rock and roll song that I heard, and I was just like, I want to do that. Whatever that is, I want to do it. Um, so I rehearsed in my garage at home, and the cops came almost every day because I was so loud. And eventually, some kids from high school came up to me and they're like, "Hey, we've heard that you play the drums. We're going to start a band. Would you be interested in being in the band?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do this." They're like, "But you have to play the bass guitar." And I'm like, "I play the drums. What are you talking about?" So anyway, my dad had bass guitar, so I was just like, okay. They taught me some basic, the root notes, and that's how I kind of started with the bass guitar because I wanted to be in this band, my very first band. And all these 80s songs, they got a lot of big backups, so I was kind of forced to try to sing the backups of these songs. So that was my first time kind of discovering that I kind of had a voice, somewhat like I could match what they were saying when I was hearing. I picked the drums because I would set up my drum kit with the cymbals in front of me and I would turn them in an angle so nobody could see me. That's how shy I was.
Ah.
So the cymbals would be covering my face and I would just be playing in the background. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to play music and not be the spotlight. That's not what I wanted at all.
I want to talk a little bit more about that reinvention into a singer because I
Yeah,
think also a lot of people think that there's just some people who can sing and some people who can't. You're just born with it and that's it. But I think that if you can sing, I mean, you even if you have the natural talent, you still have to train and learn and practice, right? There's work that goes into it, even if you're a natural.
absolutely. Absolutely. You got to think about it. It's not just singing, like you can get up and sing a song. It's like if you want to be a performer, you have to be able to sing every night, or however, if you're going to go on tour, you got to really, it's a muscle, you have to practice it. You have to learn how to use it correctly because you can sing incorrectly, you can hurt yourself and, but you're right. It's not, you can be born with a musical talent, with the ear, and not have a voice, but you can train your voice. Absolutely, you can train your voice. Singing is something anybody can do as long as you have the ear. You got to have the musical, it's not just singing. You got to be able to sing in tune and all that. And that's when your ear comes along.
Right. That's what, because I'm sitting here thinking, wait, maybe there's hope for me yet, because I can't sing at all. But I don't have the musical ear. So there it
Yeah, you gotta be able to hear what note you're hitting to make sure that you're at the right note.
is.
If you
Got
don't
it.
have that, if there's something wrong with your ears, I don't know.
Well, I love the story about you hiding behind the drums because when people
Yes,
see you on stage now,
I
they would
know.
never guess that you're actually an introvert. I know this is something that we've bonded over in the past because I also
Yes,
am an introvert and I had a very
yeah,
extroverted job. But the thing is that not all introverts have stage fright. I don't have stage fright. I'm good being in front of a crowd of 1,000 people. It's all good. But you did. So, how were you able to overcome that? Because obviously you had to, because now you are in front of a lot of people when you're on stage.
yes. I don't know. I think it's because I love music so much, and it's something that I really want to do. That was like an obstacle that was in front of me, and I was just like, if I don't do this, if I don't get past this, I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do. Even now, I still get nervous, and it doesn't matter if I'm in front of, you know, 20 people or 5,000 people. I still get in, and I think that's healthy because if you go out there thinking you're, you know, this rock star person, you go out there, especially the voice. The voice, you one morning you can wake up, you have a great voice. Next morning you're gonna have to, fight with it a little bit. So the fact that you get a little bit nervous is actually good because it kind of, it shakes you. It's like, okay, you got to do this right.
Keeps
But
you
yeah, that
humble, right?
keeps you
Keeps you
humble.
humble.
Exactly that. Yeah, it keeps you humble. But that was very difficult for me to overcome, to be able to not be nervous. If it wasn't for music, I don't know. I I think I'd be locked up in a room somewhere programming or something, hiding from people.
Or
So
still playing the drums, right?
I was still playing the drums, yeah, with more cymbals, hiding myself. Yeah.
I know that your mom thought it was important for you to study something other than music, just so you'd have
Yes.
like a backup plan just in case. So you
Yes.
went to school for electronic engineering and you're working, you're going to school, you're rehearsing with your band at night. You talk about how you had some really long days and then it was one right after the other. How important was that sort of schedule? And I assume it was worth it for you.
Oh, absolutely. It was worth it. Yeah, it was intense. I would get up like at 5. I used to be a pest control guy. I would get up at 5 and drive the truck and spray lawns and inside houses for bugs. And then in midday, I would drive to school. And then I would be at school till like, I don't know, I think it was like 9. And then I had homework, and there was a lot of stuff. And then I would go rehearse after that for an hour, at night. And then I have to drive back all the way to Deltona and do it all over again. You know, those are some long days, but it was worth it. I mean, I had fun doing it. Um, you know, playing music, even though I wasn't playing out like in bars and clubs like that much back then. I was still hanging out with my friends. We all loved music, so it was just a very cool bonding experience with your friends that actually enjoyed the same things. Even though I was super super tired, I didn't care. But you know what? Even now, like now that I'm touring and stuff like that, the schedule is the same. I still get 3 4 hours of sleep a night if I'm lucky, but it doesn't bother me. I'm just like this just because I grew up like that. So it kind of happened for a reason. And that's the way that I look at it.
So right now you're not just touring with a band, you do have a full-time regular job on top
I
of that,
do.
right?
I do. I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I do IT work. So I study electronic engineering, and I became an instructor at Full Sail here in Orlando as a studio maintenance instructor, teaching electronics and stuff like that, teaching how to fix some of the machines. But then I moved into computers, which is not so much electronic component level type things. It's more, software development and stuff like that. And now you just replace a board that goes bad, and you don't have to know component level electronic stuff anymore. But I'm glad I went to school because I learned a lot. I learned how to learn, and I learned technology, which if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have a job right now. You know what I'm saying? Um, which I still need. And music. I don't think it's ever going to be like it was back in the 80s or 70s and 80s with music. Like the music industry has changed so much. You know, you're not going to become this millionaire person with a hit song. That's just not going to happen anymore. But at least I get to perform in front of a lot of people singing and doing what I want to do. So it's not so much about the money because the money's not there in that way. So I still got to work, but that's fine. You know, I'm okay with it.
But what about these YouTube people? There's so many, I feel like, especially the younger generation, who they get discovered by just putting their video on YouTube.
Yeah.
Is that the future?
Well, that's what happened to me, kind of.
Oh,
Um, yes. So I posted a video of me singing Journey years, like when I was in Rocketfly, just out of the blue. I just got up. I was just up one night. It's like, I'm just going to record this song and post it on YouTube. And a lot of people, I got a lot of messages like, wow, that was great. And I was not expecting any of that. And from that video, I've gotten so many opportunities. Jeff from Buddha Moonshine discovered me from a YouTube video, and years later we did a record together, of original music. So that was a YouTube thing. And then, believe it or not, I used to live in a Apopka, and right across the street from me, um, this guy bought a house that was for sale. And you know who this guy was? Which is pretty amazing.
who?
Jonathan Cain of Journey. He was actually my neighbor for
Wow.
for like a year, and I was just a surprise. And so I sold my house, and the last day I was like, okay, it's now or never. I got to go knock on the door, just introduce myself. I need to meet Jonathan Cain. So I walked in, and he's like, oh, I know you. I've seen YouTube videos of you. So even he saw my YouTube videos that I just randomly posted them out there. So I thought that was kind of cool. And even now, like I had an audition with Skid Row. You remember Skid Row from the
Oh,
80s?
yeah. Uh huh.
So I had an audition with Skid Row like a year ago from a friend. They said they're looking. I think you would do great. So I go over there, do the audition, and I got called again for a second audition. Everything went fine, but their manager calls me. He's like, hey, the guys loved you, blah blah blah, but they're looking for something specific. So you're not gonna get it, whatever. He's like, but I saw your YouTube videos of singing Journey songs, and I actually am the guitar player of a Journey tribute band, and that was Voyage.
Well, I know when I first met you, you were married, had a son around my
Yes,
kid's age, and I know
yeah,
that marriage ended in divorce. So I think a lot of people don't really think about both either marriage or divorce as a reinvention, but I really do think there's this creation of a whole new identity in both of those things. So can you share just a little bit about that transition time in your life?
yeah. That was something else. that the best word that I can describe that is it's like a spiritual awakening. You're living your life, and you're doing things how everybody thinks you should be doing things, and but you really need to pay attention to how you're feeling. And it doesn't mean that that you're in a bad marriage or a bad relationship. It's something else. And it's kind of hard to explain to people until they're in that situation in their life. It's just like you're just existing, and that's not how things should be. um, and really you have to at least for me, when you feel that way, you get to a point where you're like, this can't be like this. There's something else. And you just kind of open up and just kind of surrender, and you get these vibes and these feelings that you have to do something else. So I think during that whole point in my life, it was me kind of discovering who I really was.
Were there some specific steps that you took that might be helpful to other people who are like relating to what you're saying right now?
I think the hardest thing for me during that time in my life was surrendering, like just letting go. Like there's a lot of fighting in your head. It's like, oh, you should, that voice in your head, you need to shut that off. You need to just don't listen to that voice in your head because it lies a lot. There's a lot of fear that it puts in you, and it kind of blocks you from doing things that you kind of want to do. And your head's telling you, oh, don't do that, you're stupid, blah blah blah. That's not going to work out. It's this dialogue in your head that you need to stop. And now the way that I did it was, I would meditate. I would just basically just sit in the chair and I would stare out the window and just not try to do anything. I was just stare. And eventually at first it was just thoughts, consuming my head. Like, what are you doing while you're sitting here? You should be doing something. And eventually it was just, I just relaxed. I just didn't have anything. No, I had no questions, no thoughts, no nothing. And the more I did that, the more the correct answers came into my head. It's like, oh, that kind of feels good if I would do that. I'm going to give that a try, or I'm going to do this. I wasn't worried about what if I failed, or what if this is not right for me. I had the feeling that I wanted to do it, so I just did it. you know, and sometimes it worked out. And when it didn't work out, I kind of learned some things about myself. It's like, I did that. It didn't work out because, I was whatever, I was too stressed out or whatever. But I think once you quiet your mind, and that's like, I think that's really hard for everybody,
Mhm.
especially now in this world that's just so chaotic. If you can learn to just quiet your mind and not expect anything, the things that you're not expecting will come to you that are good for you.
It's like you return to your introverted roots by being quiet.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But the funny thing is when you're well, when you're younger, you're an introvert, you still have that dialogue in your head, and I think it holds you back from a lot of things. Like, I know when I think back when I was younger, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm missing so many things because I was so scared and so in my head, telling me these things that were going to happen, which was just me. I was just creating these things. They weren't true.
Well, obviously, music played a part in your career reinventions, but do you also think that music sort of guided your personal reinvention or awakening?
Music has been everything for me. When I was growing up and, being bullied and everything, I would turn to music. I was just kind of dive into music and just kind of forget the world. Same thing when I was a teenager. Music has always been, and when I started writing songs or learning how to write songs, that was such a cool thing, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I can just create something out of air. It's just in my head. And I'm creating these notes and these lyrics and these melodies. It's like I'm doing this. Nobody else is doing this. Nobody's telling me what to do. It's like it's like freedom, you know. Music is freedom, but music has definitely guided me through my entire life since I was a little kid. It still is now.
Well, I know you're remarried now, you have another beautiful baby, but
Yeah.
what was that reinvention like, especially in what I would call your midlife? And I can say that because we're the same age.
Yeah. 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 It's definitely not something I was planning or expecting, in my age to kind of start over basically with a new child. But it's been great. You see, you become a parent, but you have a different perspective. When you're a new parent, you're kind of learning things. Now you kind of know what to expect, so it's now you're not as scared, I guess.
One thing I know about you is that you didn't seem to be content with just playing with Rocketfly on the weekends. You were performing with other bands, you've had a solo career, you sing in both English and Spanish, you've talked about writing songs, you've produced albums, you've toured several original songs. I know you've performed at SeaWorld and Daytona
Yeah,
Bike Week, and of course now you're touring with Voyage. You said the Journey
yeah,
tribute band. So how did you jump from singing in bars and local dives to these big stages and now a North American tour? All, of course, while you're still holding down a full time job and being a husband and a dad to a teenager and a new baby.
yes,
It's a
yeah.
lot.
That is a lot. And you know what? I am so thankful that I'm able to do all this. I think I've been in training since I was a little kid. you know, growing up, going to school, working all these long hours. Just the days are just, I mean, 14, 15-hour days or craziness.
What is your advice to others who may have a passion or a hobby or a side gig, something that they want to pursue more, or even maybe switch over to a full-time career doing it? What would your best advice be for reinvention?
Make sure that whatever it is that you think you want, you really want. Because, for example, music, a lot of people get into music for different reasons. When I got into music, into rock music originally, not only was it for the music, but I got into for the girls. You know, I was a teenager. I was like, hey, the girls, but that fades away. If you really do not like whatever it is you're getting into, like for me, music, don't do it. Because music, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it's just constant, it's just a lot, to get to that point. Don't listen to the voice in your head that you can't do it, that you're going to fail, that there's other people that can do it better. Nonsense. Total nonsense. Because I never thought I would end up singing in a band touring the US and Canada. When I was a little kid, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be hiding behind drums.
Do you foresee yourself continuing to balance both music and your IT job? Like, can you see yourself doing just one or the other or one thing?
I would love to just do music because that's really what I want to do. That's like the most normal for me. That's not work. You know, that's like just me having a good time. You know,
I'd love to pick your brain real quick about AI because obviously you're an IT computer guy, and I've
yeah.
seen a lot of your own
Oh,
AI
yeah,
experience and fun projects that you're doing.
yeah,
Um, but when it comes to music, I've also seen, I mean, there's that album on Spotify that was completely created with AI and people are buying it.
yeah.
So, as a true musician and a front man for this big band, what are your thoughts on people, not people, computers taking over your singing job?
It's very scary because I use some of these applications and I'm just amazed what it spits out. I'm just like, wow, you know. But you know what? That's you can't hold back technology. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. But you know what? What I've done is I'm using it for my benefit. Like for example, if I have an idea of a song, I'll record it on the guitar, like an acoustic guitar on my phone, and I'll kind of push it through the software, and it kind of gives me feedback. I can from the software, I can actually from a click of a mouse, I can add a drum, or I can do this. I can compose a little bit easier than I did in the past. In the past, I had to record every single instrument and kind of put it together, and then so it does make my job easier when I'm at least for songwriting and song arrangement.
Does it make you nervous? Like when you're using the software or the AI and you're putting your song in there or your voice in there, now it has that
Yeah,
information. Now,
yeah,
what's it going to do with that information? Yes, it's going to help you, but is it also
right.
going to be used in another way?
That is correct. That's exactly how what happens. So I put in my idea in their AI, and the AI will help me, do whatever. But the AI has my idea. So somebody else, you log in and you put in whatever you idea, or you don't even have to put in idea. You just say, I want a song about this, and it spits it out for you. And it can use my melody in your song, and I would never know it.
Right.
And
And
I mean,
yeah.
that's just the way that it is. It's like, are you willing to take the risk to save you some time? So sure, AI may have my idea and some it may give it to somebody else. I have other ideas.
All right. Well, now that you've reinvented your career and your life a few times,
Yeah,
do you feel like you're done with reinventions? Or would you say that some of those past experiences have maybe actually made you more courageous for in reinventing other areas of your life?
absolutely. Courageous is the right word because once you get, when you're going through the initial reinvention, you're you're breaking down whatever fear you have. And you kind of get past it. You're like, for example, the Skid Row audition. I was terrified. You know, I'm a huge Skid Row fan, and here I am. I'm going to fly out and actually perform with the actual guys that I grew up listening to. And I was this close and not doing it because I was so scared. I was just like, "What are you doing? This is your chance. Just do it, whatever." But when you reinvented yourself at least once, you have a little bit more courage, to go to that, because now you're kind of more comfortable. It's okay, things can happen and things probably will happen again, and you just gotta move forward.
Awesome. Pedro, thank you. Thank you for being here and being a guest on my
Thank
podcast.
you. Thank you for having me.
If people want to know more about you, where can they
Yeah.
find you or follow you or go see you on tour?
Well, you can go for Voyage. You can go to voyageband.com or Rocketfly, rocketfly.com. And then you can find me on Facebook, Pedro Espada. That's where I normally post all my show stuff on there. So you can find me there.
All right. Well, I know that your story of reinvention, multiple reinventions, will inspire so many others. So thank you
So
again for being here.
thank you for having me.
So, what about you? Were you inspired by Pedro's story? Reinvention doesn't always begin with confidence or knowing exactly what you want to do next. Sometimes it begins with uncertainty, hardship, with loss, or with the feeling that the life you built no longer fits who you are. Many of us spend years becoming the person we think we're supposed to be, building careers, meeting expectations, and checking all the boxes. But somewhere along the way, there's often a deeper part of us that keeps calling us back. A passion, a talent, a creative spark, something that reminds us who we really are. Reinvention often starts the moment we decide to listen to that voice. So here's my challenge. What is the thing that makes you feel most alive? Maybe it's music. Maybe it's something you loved as a child. Maybe it's something you set aside when life got busy. Or maybe it's something you've been afraid to pursue. Whatever it is, take one step toward it. Because reinvention doesn't have to be about completely starting over. It can be the pursuit of something more. Reinvention is possible. Go make it happen for you today.